Okay, normally this would be where the soundtrack comes in, but I was in a bit of a rush, and I got it, but it got left behind.
Good stuff. Very good stuff. Although I guess we'll be playing the actual, the listeners will have heard the actual audio. So
Will they have, or would you
well,
leaving me like this?
I
That
mean,
might
yeah,
be funny.
that could be funny. Yeah, if we just started off like this. All right, start it off. Yeah, just
Welcome to Cricket Commentaries. As always, I'm your host, Jake Mastro, and as always, I'm joined by my very good friend and co-host, Keaton Byer. Hello, Keaton.
hello. How are you?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
So you gotta be ready. You know,
Ready for what?
the apocalypse presumably, because
Yeah.
it could fucking happen at any time. Like literally any time.
Yeah.
Or specifically, I guess the rapture. Um,
Okay.
so, so I guess we should introduce the film that we're gonna talk about here.
I thought this was a bit that you had.
No, I have nothing.
Oh, I thought that's what you were doing.
No. I was just
Because that
stating-
soundtrack thing, that was my bit.
Yeah. No, I was just saying be ready because that's one of the lines in the film
Okay.
that we're doing today.
So yeah, we're doing the classic Nicolas Cage
Classic?
film Left Behind.
Is this a classic Nicolas Cage film? I hadn't heard.
I don't know. It's pretty bad.
I had never heard of this film prior to us picking it.
Maybe that's for the best.
Probably for the best. So we picked this film because we wanted to do a specifically bad movie.
Yeah, because I don't know. We had so much fun doing the last bad movie.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we accidentally stumbled into a massive franchise in our our plan here. But do you want to explain how we stumbled across this film? How we came to choose this
Yeah,
as our bad
okay.
film?
Basically, I was showing you a video by Numberphile, which is basically the internet's premier resource for popular mathematics, I should say.
Popular mathematics.
The video was entitled "Does Hollywood Ruin Books?" and it was presented by Hannah Fry.
Very interesting video.
Yeah, very interesting video. But she has this graph in it where she shows the average score on Goodreads of every book that she has in her database that's been turned into a movie versus the Metacritic score of every movie on there that's adapted from a book. And basically the conclusion is that in general Hollywood does not tend to make books that are worse than the film. Sorry, films that are worse than the book. However, there are outliers. And the reason for this is the reason why this perception exists is because of a statistical fallacy that is explained in the video, but you can go watch that if you want.
Yeah, that's slightly beside the point. Yeah,
that's beside the point. But anyway, we decided to look at the outliers on this graph.
Yeah, this is statistically a bad movie and a bad book.
Well, that's how it's rated on Metacritic and Goodreads, right?
It's
normalized
based on...
for But anyway, some of the films that we thought about were Battlefield Earth, which is way far out there on terrible books and terrible movies.
Yeah, that was by far the worst one. So I think we were quite it was the most isolated one on the chart. So I think we were definitely both drawn to that one.
There's
first.
also this film Taking Lives, which we didn't look into, but
I
that
think
was
I
more
looked
of a
at
bad book that
right.
I guess is also a bad movie. But in terms of bad film, yeah, Left Behind and Battlefield Earth are right at the bottom.
Yeah, so...
But we didn't want to do Battlefield Earth just because various reasons.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of... If you look into that movie, there's some rabbit holes that you could really fall down, which, honestly, I did not... I kind of, fucked myself, because this movie also has, fucking rabbit holes that I fell down as well, so... That I did not expect to fall down at all, so...
But anyway,
that's pretty interesting.
This film, as we alluded to, is based on a book, which has a below-average Goodreads score.
What is its
And
Goodreads score? Do you know? Do you have that
I don't
information?
actually know because I'm looking at the Z score here, which is normalized.
Right,
So I
right,
can
right.
go on Goodreads and find out what it is, though. If you want me to find out.
So this film, Left Behind. So, like I said, it's a fucking rabbit hole because this movie is a reboot of a film series.
3.84 out of 5, which is on the lower end of. It's in the bottom half of Goodreads scores.
Yeah, yeah. Like when you weight Goodreads scores, that's
Yeah,
a
so
bad
like
one.
exactly over more than half of the books are rated higher than this.
Yeah,
Basically, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Um.
so yeah, it was based on a reboot of a film series, and this film series was based on a book series, and that book series was loosely based on a different film series,
Oh,
which
I
of
didn't even know
course
there was another film series.
was based on the Bible, of course.
Yeah.
Loosely based.
Yeah.
um, but yeah. So I guess before we've got a lot to talk about this episode. Like, we'll see how far we get because there's, like I said, there's so many fucking rabbit holes and like various little fucking things we can talk about. But we're gonna do the 5 minute summary as we always do, and then we're
Yeah.
gonna just kind
Keaton,
of talk about the basic
it's
facts.
your turn this week, and this is a really easy film to do in terms of the summary. I actually think
I don't know.
because
I
nothing
feel like,
happens in this movie.
I guess
Like,
there's a lot of
think
little
about
details.
it. Like, it's a lot of little details,
It's
but
a
they're not
fucking
important at
2 hour
all.
movie.
I know exactly. Anyway,
So
so why don't you go through it? I'll put on the timer here. Sure. Just give me
okay,
1
all right.
second.
Just let me know when
Let me
you're
grab my
when you're
stopwatch here.
starting. Yeah.
Starting now.
Okay, so you've got a university student from UCA. I don't know where that is. She's flying back home. I believe it's New York. She's in New York, somewhere in New York. I don't know. And she's going home to surprise her father for his birthday because it's his birthday, and her father's a pilot, and I think things have been tense. Is kind of the implication. So she calls up her mother, and it turns out her father is actually not at home. He had to quote go to work unexpectedly on his birthday. So that's a bit strange. So then
He's a pilot.
he's a pilot, so she's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna fucking wait here at the airport for him because this is where he works, and I'm gonna see him. So while she's waiting, she meets this strapping man who is a photojournalist named Cameron Buck Williams. And she meets him when he's being like harassed by a like evangelical lady. I forget, for some reason she's just saying something about like all the things that he's covering is like, the harbinger of the apocalypse or whatever, and then like, Chloe comes in and like fucking shuts her down and is like, calls her a wacko, and then we learn that Chloe's mom is also like going down this road. She's recently become a super hardcore evangelical Christian, and this is causing a lot of tension, specifically with Chloe, who's like not into all that, and her father. She thinks that their parents are gonna divorce. Anyway, so now we meet we meet her father, who it seems like is cheating on his mother with immediately with a flight attendant. So then they get on they meet, they have a conversation, blah blah blah, it doesn't matter. They get on a plane to London. Cameron Buck Williams gets on the flight. So now we have Buck and Nic Cage on a flight together to London. Chloe goes home. She takes her brother to the mall, and then all of a sudden there's a moment where it's like poof, bang, boom, really bad special effects, and a bunch of people disappear, just vanish, and all their clothes are left behind. So obviously, because I don't know, however many people have just vanished off the face of the earth, like chaos ensues. I don't know, like how much chaos would ensue versus what they showed, but chaos really reigned for a while, and especially on the plane, they were at each other's throats. It was not great. And then what happens then?
3 minutes left. Sorry, 3 minutes gone. 2 minutes left.
Okay, so then Chloe is like on the ground, really, she's just going through the world, just like really having a bad time, meeting all the like non-Christians and like how bad shit's going on since all the Christians left. And so then she's like, "Oh my God, my mother wasn't crazy. My mother was she wasn't a wacko. She's a good one." So she is like, "Oh, gosh darn, I should have been nicer to my evangelical mother." So she climbs to the top of a bridge to kill herself. And then just as she gets to the top of a bridge, she gets a call from her father and Buck, who are in the plane, which has no landing gear and or it does have landing gear, but it has no fuel, and it's gonna crash because it has no wing thingies to like make it stop easy. And then
Elevators.
no elevators, and then there's no fucking runway either because it's chaos because all the Christians are gone. So they have to find a new place to land. So Chloe finds a runway like somewhere outside of town and like starts a big gas fire in order to help the plane land. And then it's a super stressful scene where the plane lands. It's a pretty hardcore scene, actually, pretty good plane crash scene. And then they fucking they all get out and they're like, "Man, like gosh darn, I'm glad this is done." And Chloe looks up at the burning New York City, and she's like, "Just begun."
All right, there you go. That was 5 minutes.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you rushed over at the end, but you got it done.
I kind of lost myself in that first bit, and then forgot I had so much left to go.
But I mean, I think essentially is a bunch of people disappear and then a plane doesn't crash.
Those are the two events, yeah. A plane.
Essentially, that's all that happens in the movie.
Yeah. Like a bunch of people disappear. Chloe walks to a bridge to kill her. Goes home and then goes to a bridge, and a plane almost crashes, and that's it. So
also, I wanna correct something that you said. You said it was all the Christians that disappeared, but it was more specific than that.
Yeah. Sorry, it was like
it was only the ones who truly believed.
Yeah, it was like because
the preacher didn't disappear.
Right, exactly. It wasn't enough to just be Christian. You had to be a true believer.
Yeah, faith alone.
Exactly. This is different. It's like that's why if you're just a fake old Christian, you're
only faith can save you. Is what they're saying.
Exactly. So, some initial thoughts. Why don't you start her off?
Okay. So, initial thoughts. You ever been watching a movie and then like in the first 5 minutes you just know what you're in for?
Yeah.
It's just
bad.
It just feels wrong. Like it just feels like somebody didn't know what they were doing when they put this together.
Yeah.
Like all the performances are just so weird.
Yeah, this movie absolutely fucking had that. Like, I even, totally in the first 5 minutes, you knew what you were in for. But even, I would argue, in the first, opening scene, you knew it was, not a well-done production, just because it was, the way it transitioned from the producers, the production companies into the title credits was so sloppy, and the editing was just really choppily. It was not good.
Yeah, the other thing I want, it's this movie doesn't have there are no secrets that are revealed or anything.
No, yeah, this movie
the one
is
thing is it's the rapture, but you already knew that because that was in the summary.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was in the synopsis, right?
Yeah.
That's based on the title of the film is Left Behind. So there's almost no point in watching the film.
Really, there is almost no point in watching the film. That's a very good way of putting it.
I I mean, the only redeeming thing about this film really is Nic Cage.
That is literally the only redeeming thing about it. Honestly, this movie was only entertaining because Nic Cage was in it. Like,
And he even seemed like he phoned it in a little bit.
oh, of course he did. Did you see what? Like, come on. Like maybe we'll talk about it more. Like, I'll look into it more. But I've like, as it stands now, I've like the rumors that I've heard is that Nic Cage was like in a lot of like tax debt,
Right.
for a while, which is why he like basically just took every role he could. And that's just why I've heard that, Nic Cage was in from like 2006 to like 2016. He was in like 2,000 horrible movies.
Right.
Because he was just taking.
So the budget for this movie was only 16 million. I'm surprised. I guess he would just had to be in a lot of movies to get paid.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he
Yeah,
just
so
fucking,
but he
yes,
was in
yes,
tax
yes,
debt.
yes, yes.
He was in tax debt after he blew all that money on Action Comics.
Yeah, and that's
Superman,
like I'll look into that for next episode. I think a little bit, just because like I don't want to just be spreading that as a rumor if it's not totally true. So
what,
grain
the
of
tax
salt.
debt?
Yeah, I don't like.
Okay, but he
that's
did
just-
spend like $1 million on a Superman comic.
Yeah, he did. He did some frivolous spending. He also like had like a bunch of properties and like got arrested in New Orleans. But we'll save the Nic Cage talk for later because like that's honestly not even the thing to talk about with this movie.
This film just has like no artistry to it.
No, like this
Just
movie is
so bad.
This movie is an agenda.
Like,
basically, the scene where she was at the top of the bridge, for me was the moment I realized this is like this is the evangelical people who made it. This is them being like, look how sorry you'll all be when it happens.
Well, that's
like,
the weird thing though. Like apparently, I was looking into this. Evangelical Christians hated this movie.
Well, yeah, there's it's interesting. We'll talk about the reception a little bit next
Nobody
episode,
liked
sure.
this movie.
Yeah.
Even the people that ostensibly it existed to please.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because there's a reason it's forgotten.
Okay.
But yeah, so let's just dive into the basic facts.
Right.
So directed by the legendary Vic Armstrong, which is hilarious that it's an absolute true legend is directing this film, and yet it's this film.
He's definitely a legend, but he's not a legend for directing.
That's the caveat.
That's the caveat there, yeah.
Yeah. So he's a famed stuntman, I believe.
Stuntman, stunt coordinator, done a lot of shit. Like,
yeah,
he's famous. Well, maybe not famously, but he was stunt double for Harrison Ford for a long time.
Yeah, he did all the Indiana Jones films.
Yeah, and some Star Wars too.
And some Star Wars, cool.
Yeah.
He's. I was reading that he's like credited as the Guinness Book of World Records, like most prolific stunt double.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing.
So yeah,
but he's worked
legend.
on like a ton of films, like also as stunt coordinator that have awesome stunts in them.
Yeah, and like that shows through in this movie. Like that's kind of the action in this movie was not too bad.
Yeah, the action that was in it. A lot of it's just a bunch of people sitting on a plane.
Yeah, a lot of it is people just sitting on a plane, and a lot of it is just like people running chaotically into each other. But like there was like 2 explosions, and then the plane crash itself, which I imagine that was the whole budget. Like Nic Cage, the plane crash, and those 2 explosions.
Yep.
But yeah. So there's. I don't know who else. Oh yeah, Chad Michael Murray I mentioned is in it, so he's probably the only other truly notable person, right?
I mean, I didn't recognize any of these people.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is a low budget, like fairly low budget film.
Yeah, I mean, Nic Cage,
like,
Chad Michael Murray.
The only thing that made it notable was that Nic Cage was in it.
Yeah, exactly. I doubt we would be talking about it if Nic Cage wasn't in it right now.
Yeah.
So, as you said, the budget was $16 million. It pulled in 27.4 million. So I don't know.
On the strength of Nic Cage's name alone, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure, but like there you go. So I'm sure
Yeah.
those production companies were happy about it.
Okay, here's the secret to making money in Hollywood. Like hire
Oh
Nic
yeah,
Cage
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
and
okay.
spend as little as possible on the rest of the movie.
That's true. That is honestly like the formula for success. Like I just
I
want
mean,
to like
you will probably not be able to run that strategy forever. There's probably a limit to it.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean you got to like find you'll probably have to like move on to another, Nic Cage eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
So should we talk about like the background cuz it's like very confusing and it's going to take
Yeah,
us a
so
while.
are you going to get into the book?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'm going to get into all the background stuff because it's
Okay.
all weird and it's all strange and yeah. So, as I mentioned, this movie is based on it's a reboot of a film series. And the film series, which I believe had 3 films with a 4th planned that was never made. We'll
Which
talk
didn't
about those
have
a
Nic
bit.
Cage in them.
We'll talk about yeah, they did not. We'll talk about
That's
those
why I've
more
never heard of them.
later. Oh no, sorry. Those I'm talking about the original film series. I believe there were definitely sequels planned for this reboot. Um,
Right, yeah.
but yeah, the
But no, I'm
original
saying
ones.
the original film series didn't have Nic Cage in it, so that's why I never heard of it.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this film series, as I said, is based on a book series from the early '90s, I believe.
Okay.
It's a book series that honestly has a fucking incomprehensible timeline. Like, and what I mean by that is that the publishing order and the chronological order is the most fucked up thing I've ever seen in my life.
So it's not linear then.
No, it's not linear. So the first published book is the 4th in the series. There were like I believe so. Let's see how many books: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 books. Between 19 oh no I was right originally, between 1995 and 2007, so actually after the original series were made, but that's not that important. um so this book series was based on a film series from the late 70s. Well, I say based, but it was more they said inspired, but when I looked into it, I used the word based.
Okay, what was the film series called?
The film series was called A Thief in the Night. So the film series honestly sounds fucking sick,
Yeah?
and I think I'm gonna try and seek it out and watch it. But it also seems kind of incomprehensible. Like
Okay.
I just glanced through the plot, and over the 4 film series, there are flashbacks within flashbacks, and several times the plot does a 180 because everything was a dream. And
Wow.
it's kind of hard to keep track of what's going on. But yeah, so that the thing, the kind of main difference here is like the main character in this series like isn't as like radically quote unquote radically liberal as Chloe is.
I don't even think she
Um,
is really that radically liberal in this film.
That's why I say quote
She's
unquote
just
because she's
somewhat skeptical of her mother.
yeah, she just thinks her mother's being a quote wacko. Well, she described the other lady as a wacko, and then
Yeah.
said her mom was also being like that. But yeah, so the original character that Chloe's based off of is a Christian who goes to church and she reads the Bible, but as you say, she's just not Christian enough. She doesn't have the faith.
Exactly.
So what is interesting between the film series and the book series is that I think the book and this series, the A Thief in the Night, has a lot more in common with the book series than it does with this film.
Okay.
But it's all based off of like the idea of the moments after the rapture, right?
Yeah.
But the film series is like the rapture happens. There's no airplane, but it's followed by kind of this whole bizarre follow up, which includes a globalist movement, led by the UN, and then they force people to receive the mark of the beast. It's really fucking weird, man. And then, but this is all beside the point.
Okay.
Like I said, because this is just the weird film series that I want to read now.
You want to read the film series?
Or sorry, I want to watch the film series. I don't want to read the book series. The book series sounds like trash.
Okay.
So let's get into the book series because this is weird as shit as well.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention just about that film series. The fourth unmade film was gonna involve like post-apocalyptic zombies, but
Pretty
they never
dope.
made it. Yeah, like that's kind of like it was a good trajectory for that series. But the book series is kind of created and co-written by one of the most powerful evangelical political voices. Maybe not evangelical might be the wrong word, but he's like conservative Christian, like to the highest order.
Okay.
A guy named Tim Leahy. Is that how you say that? Leahy?
I would say LaHaye, but I don't know.
LaHaye.
LAHAYE.
Let's say LaHaye.
Yeah.
So Tim LaHaye. So people who have studied politics probably know who he is.
I
but
don't.
yeah, well, because he's kind of like one of those like shadow figures. Like he never
Okay.
really like held office, but he was like a lobbyist and he created a lot of like think tanks. He was a good buddy of Jerry Falwell Sr. And helped found the CNP, which did a lot of Reagan's more conservative policies.
Okay.
He also founded the American Coalition for Traditional Values, which I looked into, and that's an American conservative Christian organization founded to oppose LGBT rights in California. So that's good stuff. So he's clearly a great guy. I say with sarcasm.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
He wrote some great books, right?
Yeah, he wrote 16 great, fantastic books. So this is fucking hilarious. Like, his idea for this book came when he was on an airplane, and he saw a pilot who he assumed was married, I guess, because he saw a wedding ring.
Right.
He saw this pilot flirting with a flight attendant, and he was like, "Oh, the shame! What would happen to him if the rapture happened right now?" And then he was like,
he would have to land the plane.
Exactly. He was like, "Oh!" So he ran home and scribbled down a bunch of notes. And he's like, "This has to be a book." So I guess he goes to. I assume he goes to like some sort of Christian publishing company. And they get sort of like this kind of, not exactly a ghostwriter, but more like a professional co-writer, a guy named Jerry B. Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a former like sports writer, and then he started just like co-writing books. He did like 16 biographies. How people like have people help them write their biographies a lot of the time because like they're Levon Helm and don't know how to write a book.
I feel like most people don't know how to write a book. I don't know how to write a book.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, he wrote the first Left Behind book, this guy Jenkins, based on a series of extensive notes from LaHaye.
Right.
So
LaHaye's like airplane scribbles.
Yeah. So this book is an Islamophobic, anti-Catholic book titled "Left Behind: A Novel of the Earth's Last Days." It was described as, quote, an attack on Judaism and liberal secularism, and being, quote, and being in, quote, lip-licking anticipation of all the blood.
Okay.
Which honestly, like, is a little watered down in the film, but I totally read that. It just seems like it just shrieked to me like I said earlier, like they'll all be sorry when it happens.
Exactly.
You'll all be sorry.
You'll all be sorry, yeah.
He was like, okay. But yeah, these books kind of have a pretty ambitious plot. Like,
Yeah, which
uh,
the film does not in any way. Like,
no, they
once again, I said nothing happens in the movies. In the movie.
like, and I don't know, like maybe they were planning on including some of these details in future films,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they just thought it was just too complicated. But yeah, the book involves another, like I said earlier with the film series, there's kind of a globalist movement that's run by the Antichrist, who is like a Romanian politician.
Okay.
It's really weird. But basically, the point is, it's all the basic details, how it starts, is all the same in the film. Like the plane and the relationships, all the details are the same. But, Jerry Falwell Sr., he loved this book. Do you want to read what he said about it?
He said, in terms of its impact on Christianity, it's probably greater than any other book in modern times, outside the Bible. That's a bold claim, Jerry.
That's fucking intense thing to say about this book. Kind of
Yeah.
makes me want to read it.
I mean, maybe. Probably not, though.
No, it's definitely not worth it. Definitely not worth the time. So how did this book series get turned into the movie series? It was shockingly, perhaps not shockingly, but it was extremely successful. Allegedly, like reportedly selling 65 million copies. And a couple of Canadians really liked them.
Yeah.
This is where the CanCon comes in. Do we have a CanCon theme song? CanCon theme song?
No, it should be the theme song for the Great White North.
Yeah, right. Probably, yeah.
I mean, yeah, let's not go on that tangent right now. But that whole segment was created because of CanCon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, two Canadian brothers, they fucking loved the books. So they had just started a production company called Cloud 10 Productions.
One higher than Cloud 9.
Goes one higher. The production company was based in St. Catharines, Ontario, so very close to us right now.
Yeah.
And Cloud 10 Productions. They specialized in apocalypse Christian films. With their recent films being Apocalypse, followed by Apocalypse 2, Revelation, and finally Apocalypse 3, Tribulation. So they got a hold of this book and they were like, wow, another book about the apocalypse? We should make this into yet another film. So they produced the original film series. Which, as I was reading about, the film series just seems to become kind of more and more isolated. Like the first one was actually quite successful, and like on opening weekend, like came number 2 to Spider-Man.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah, so, but the as the movies came out, they became less and less like mainstream. I think because, they got weirder and weirder and more like overtly like,
Right. Theological.
Yeah. So it kind of got to the point where the third film was like, it was previewed in churches, and then it went directly to video. So, yeah. So that's the third film.
So there's some legal issues, I see.
This part gets fucking confusing, if it's not already very confusing. So LaHaye, the author of the books, he sues Cloud 10 Productions over their rights to keep making the movies, I think. Presumably because he wasn't pleased with, like, the direction they had gone with the films.
Okay. Or just the general quality of them.
Yeah, like, I guess not. Like, what happened in the end is Cloud 9 settled, and it seemed that it was basically the terms where it's kind of like a race for production. So the terms seemed to be like that they both kind of had the ability to do something with it, but if LaHaye started writing books again, they would lose the rights.
Oh, okay, so they had to make a movie before he wrote another book.
Basically, is kind of what it came down to.
And did that become this film?
That is became this film.
Right, I see.
So we finally fucking made it to this movie. Basically. So one of the brothers from Cloud9, a guy named Paul Lalonde, he starts a new production company, and he's like, all right, here we fucking go. It's time to reboot this franchise. So he co-writes a new script, and he gets Vic Armstrong on board.
So Vic Armstrong is the aforementioned stunt legend.
Yeah, and just like a funny little entirely unimportant, unrelated detail is the director of the first film was also named Vic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find his full name. It was directed by Vic Sarin. So that's kind of weird.
That is weird.
But it also is entirely irrelevant. But yeah, so Vic Armstrong is the director, and as I said, this is kind of when Nic Cage joins the fray. But I think we're gonna start talking about the actual kind of filming and production, and like how like I said, I'm gonna kind of look into the Nic Cage story, I think, and try and see if there's any truth to that rumor. I just want to know why
there is some truth to it. I suspect
this is a curious role for him to take, unless he's like more, faithful than I thought.
Well, I suspect that he isn't, based on what was it? I mean, first of all, apparently Nic Cage was raised as a Catholic, which this film would probably lead you to believe will not go to heaven.
Yeah, Catholics. Yeah, I believe in the book series, the Catholics don't go to heaven, and like the Pope does, but only because he was like secretly like Protestant or something. It's
okay,
weird.
so this is when he was asked about the film Knowing being religion themed or not, he said, "Any of my personal beliefs or opinions run the risks of impinging on your own relationship with the movie. I feel that movies are best left enigmatic, left raising more questions than answers. I don't ever want to preach. So whatever you get from the movie is far more interesting than anything I could ever offer."
When did Knowing come out? When is that interview from? Is that before or after this movie? I think that was before, right? Knowing was like 2008 or something.
Let's find out. 2009. So I suspect basically he just doesn't care.
Yeah, I think it's
that's what I got out of that. But
oh yeah, did we mention? I don't even know if we mentioned the year that this film came out, but I think it was 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, October 3rd, 2014. So kind of towards the end of his most prolific period.
Right.
Because he started kind of doing real things again, hasn't he? Sort of.
Yeah, he's supposed to. A couple of movies he's in or is going to be in.
But yeah. So we'll get more into that sort of detail next week. But I believe we have something else to get to.
Hello and welcome once again to 6 Degrees of Star Trek. This is the segment in which we talk about Star Trek and the connections of each film to it. Sorry?
How's that gonna work this week? I guess Nic Cage is kind of your only option.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Okay.
So let me get something straight.
Okay.
This film is not good enough to be directly connected to Star Trek in any way.
No. No, that much is clear from the get.
Star Trek didn't want to directly touch this movie in any way.
Yeah, they're like
Anyway, so
it just couldn't
let's
happen.
go. Let's start with Vic Armstrong.
Okay, yeah, right. That makes
Vic
sense.
Armstrong, who's not been involved in Star Trek, was the stunt coordinator for Mission Impossible 3.
Really? That's intense. That's hardcore. That must have had some serious fucking stunts in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, any fucking Tom Cruise movie, man.
Yeah, like stunt coordinator on a Tom Cruise movie. That's some clout.
Yeah, so this film was directed by J.J. Abrams, who also co-wrote it with one Alex Kurtzman. Both names that we mentioned in this segment.
They've come up
Abrams,
out of the segment.
Obviously responsible for Abrams' Trek, along with Kurtzman, who has continued to be involved in the series, the more modern Star Treks.
Indeed, yeah.
Producing several of the modern series. Next, let's go through Nic Cage, and I everybody's familiar with 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? And how that is somewhat related to this segment.
Yeah, that was the seed from which this segment grew.
So, I actually think that I don't think this. I know this. I have the hardcore data to back this up. That in fact, Nic Cage is a better center than Kevin Bacon.
Doesn't shock me, really.
The average number of steps to get from anybody to Kevin Bacon is 3.164.
3.164. Okay, so just over 3.
The average number of steps to get from anybody to Nicolas Cage is only 3.039.
Holy smokes. That's crazy. That's almost the whole point.
Yeah, so it should be called 4 Degrees of Cage.
Yeah, that's...
Actually, no, because there are probably ones that take more, but it averages out to 3.
Yeah,
anyway,
he's just been in so many movies that it really doesn't surprise me that
So let's talk about Star
everybody.
Trek. I'm just gonna go through different connections between Nic Cage and Star Trek.
Yeah, fucking right. Sounds good.
Just gonna roll with it. Okay, Nicolas Cage was in a film called World Trade Center with Jude Chicolella.
When did that movie come out?
Let's find out. We got to do these rapid fire because there's a bunch.
There's a bunch. Okay.
That Jude, who I don't know who that is, was in Star Trek Nemesis.
Okay. Sick.
We also have Nicolas Cage was in the film Primal with Famke Janssen, who was in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, who we've talked about.
Sick. I'd not heard of that Nic Cage movie.
Nicolas Cage
not heard
was
of
in
the Nic
Grand
Cage
Isle with Kelsey Grammer. Kelsey Grammer was in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah. That I think we've talked about that one before. I've not heard of that movie either. So far these are all Nic Cage movies I've never heard of.
Nicolas Cage was in The Boy in Blue with Christopher Plummer.
The Boy in Blue with Christopher Plummer?
Yeah.
I mean, Christopher Plummer was in it, so I feel like that's one I should have heard of, but I've also not heard of that one.
1986 Canadian drama film.
Okay, so this was like a young
Nick Cage. Yeah. And
he
Christopher
looked
Plummer,
exactly like my dad.
Christopher Plummer was in Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country.
Yeah, right. We've talked about Christopher Plummer.
Yes, Nicolas Cage was in Dying of the Light with Anton Yelchin, who plays Chekhov in the newer Star Trek films.
May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. And okay, he was in the film Wind Talkers with Christian Slater.
Christian Slater, wow. I also haven't heard of that movie. When was that one?
2002. Wind Talkers.
Okay.
And Christian Slater was in... Which Trek was he in? Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. With Christopher Plummer.
Who did he play? Christian Slater?
It was a very small role.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he was
anyway,
there.
Yeah, so I could probably keep going, but that's a bunch for now.
I mean, yeah, the fucking goes on and on and on and on.
But Nicolas Cage himself has never been in Star Trek,
which is a travesty. But
maybe it could still happen.
It could still. It should happen, and I'm sure it will.
One day.
If he's still as irresponsible with his money as that rumor suggests he is, then yeah, maybe we'll see him in some more stuff.
Yeah.
But I really, again, just a rumor that I'm gonna look into, because we're gonna get.
I'm pretty sure
sometimes
it's true. I've heard it other places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gotta come from somewhere.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
yeah,
man, what a fucking bad movie. And like, I just want to stress this is like, yeah, like you could talk about like the theological aspects of this movie, but like,
yeah, that's just secondary.
This movie's bad. That's all second. That's got nothing to do with why this movie's bad.
I mean, it's got a little bit of something to do with it, but it's like you could write several books on why this movie is bad without talking about it.
Exactly. It's like
aside
just
from
like
that, it's so
really
bad.
Fucking terrible. Like, just really stiff performances. Makes no fucking sense. Nothing happens. It's just no good.
Yeah. Down the list, the only reason, and I honestly found myself slightly entertained at moments, but just because of Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
And that speaks to Nick.
Really does. Deserves
his
an
power.
Oscar.
He really does.
Yeah.
Really does. So, is that all we have for this week?
Is it? Seems like a light week.
It is a light week, yeah. I kind of blew through that information. I thought it would take longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you have it. We'll talk about...
shout out to our listeners in Ukraine.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking right.
Fucking right.
Yeah, so next week we're going to talk about, the actual filming. I think we're going to talk about how Nic Cage came to be in this movie.
Yeah.
We'll do our special
there might also be some truth.
Yeah, we get to the bottom. We're going to fucking get to the bottom of something or other. I mean, like, Lord knows at this point.
I'm sure he does.
Gosh darn. I walked right into that one.
Yeah. All right, we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
A man and wife asleep in bed. She hears a voice and turns her head. He's gone.